Jim,
Thank you.
run? Okay.
You're welcome.
Make sure we're at 7. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call our meeting to order. Today is March 29th, 2023, Town of Southington Board of Finance meeting. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Bose?
Hold that real close.
Okay. Mr. Bedoin.
Here.
Mr. Morrison.
Here.
Mrs. Zoni.
Here.
Mr. Pocock Jr.
Here.
Mr. Lebenik.
Here.
And Chairman Leary.
Here.
All present and accounted for.
Okay, I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes from the February 15th meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any motion and a second, any discussion on February 15th minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the February 15th minutes are now official. Ask for a motion on the approval of the minutes from the March 9th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second on March 9th. Any discussion, corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we're going to get into the adoption of the fiscal year 2023-2024 Board of Finance proposed budget. And we'll make motions on it, but I did want to take a moment to describe the process. A lot of people here, a lot of people watching, and a lot of people like to understand this. How this process works in short is the Board of Ed gathers all the needs and asks from everyone. So there's a whole process that takes place from the superintendent on down to the buildings and program leaders, and they roll up a budget. And somewhere in there, they propose what they need, and the superintendent does what he needs to do to propose a budget that he believes is reasonable and reflective of the need to the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed takes it, holds a couple of workshops, they work on it, and they present the need up to, it's supposed to come to Board of Finance, but it stops at the manager who puts it all into one book. But the need is then comes from a vote at the Board of Education. That comes forward. On the general government side, it's somewhat similar, where the town manager goes out to all the department heads, said, what are your needs, what are your wants, what's going on in the upcoming year? And through a probably a very long and elaborate process, they come forward on the general government side with a budget. And then, somewhat simultaneous to that, the assessor's office is gathering data on the grand list. So they're taking a look at what are all the properties in town. We did not have a revaluation this year, which is good because that just throws another complication in. And they come forward with the grand list. So the grand list is a list of all the taxable property at the value assigned to it. And the value comes from pretty much from the previous revaluation, automobiles valued at, I think, off Kelley Blue Book, and they come to a grand list. So then we have the Board of Ed budget, we have the town budget, there are other three little ones you'll hear tonight, the sewer fund, the animal control, which is just a separate fund, and then you'll hear the first year of the capital plan. We have a 5-year capital plan. With this budget, we approve year 1 of that. All that makes its way to the budget, and then you look at revenue. So we also, the town manager does most of that on the revenue side, puts together all the revenue we expect to get. So when you look at revenue, high level, big picture, there's grants coming into the Board of Ed for $20 million. Then there's a bunch of other grants that come in town fees, and there's about $33 million of revenue comes into the town. And then we look at the spend, and you look at the revenue, you have a big difference, and that becomes taxes needed. So what happens is you look at what you need, you say, oh, brother, we need all this money to make up the difference between revenue and expense. So as the process goes, it gets marked up a little bit for uncollectible tax. You can't assume that every bit of revenue we need, everybody's going to pay the exact amount of tax to get there. You put a little cushion in, and we'll talk about that tonight. And so we up it 1.8, 1.7%, and we tax that amount, a little bit higher than what's needed, to allow for uncollectible taxes. That sets the mill rate. So the mill rate then becomes what revenue do we need divided by the grand list. That gives you a percentage, which is called the mill rate. You multiply it by 1,000, and it comes out to be, a mill rate like the one we have now is 29.13. So what that means is that everybody who has property, and that property could be a vehicle, that property could be a home, a piece of property, it could be commercial land, commercial buildings, it could be for businesses, it could also be furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, which is stuff within a business that they use to carry out that business. And that's all taxable at the mill rate. And when all that happens, the taxes come in, and the taxes then cover the taxes along with the income together cover the expenses of the town. When dealing with this particular budget, in all the years I've been here since 2009, this has been one of the highest, and I would say almost the most challenging. Others, could agree, or depending on where you sit and how you see it. This particular budget came to us requesting, as it was presented, it came to us requesting 1.94 mils, so almost 2 mils more, and basically a $12,899,234 in additional spend. So last year to this year, no new services, nothing new in the budget. Board of Ed side, town side, came in $12,000,009 more than last year. So if you go out into the world this year, you'll get the same services that you saw last year, $12,000,009 more. That's when that was brought down to the bottom line, the tax increase that people were facing in this budget, or until we do what we do, was 6.66%. 666. 6.66%.
We'll go with 7.
7 was the
7.
was the tax increase that was presented in the budget. Now, we looked at that, and that would have been the highest tax increase. Anybody who's paying tax would have paid about 7% more, whether that's on a car, a house, whatever. And, our job here, all of us, is to come up with how do we fund government, how do we keep taxes as best we can in line, not have a lot of peaks and valleys, and get the job done. That's the kind of the responsibility of this board, is to comb over it all and to make a recommendation to town council. We're going to do that momentarily. After we're done, town council will get the budget in a similar manner. We can't add to the budget without a public hearing, so we only look at it and go downward. And then town council will get a hold of the budget, and they will look at it, and they will look at our recommendation, and I think with a 2/3 vote, they could override the recommendation, right? It's a simple majority.
Actually, simple majority.
Simple
Passes
majority.
your budget to go down is 5 and to go up is 6.
So town council will get a hold of the budget, they'll do their thing. Ours will be just a recommendation to them, and then they will come back, when they vote on their budget, it comes back to us, and only this board could set the mill rate. Generally, that's just math. They give us a budget, we know the grand list, it doesn't change, we do the division, and we come up with the new mill rate. That's how the process works in a simplified way for everyone. And so now, what do we do? Well, we have 4 workshops that we held. And these are workshops where all of our members sat in the room, and we've been doing this for the past several years, many almost, not the whole time I was here, but many. We invite town manager, finance director, superintendent of schools. We invite folks from the Board of Ed chair and other folks who come in, and anybody could observe. They're public meetings. But we invite those people to be there to help us. And they're there to answer questions. If we have them, we can just turn around and they're right there. So every step of the way, your Board of Education, at times town council was there, they're just observing, and town manager and finance director were with us every step of the way, and finance director from the Board of Ed. Jennifer was with us every step of the way as we went through this. So they kind of knew what we were saying, what we were thinking, what we were discussing, and I thought the collaboration was very helpful. because at times we were, we'd think of something, we'd run it by them, we worked, it was good collaboration, was had by all, as we say. So now, the challenge before us is to put forth the budget. But just before we do, I had a couple of thoughts outside of the procedure. Number one, everybody recognized, from the superintendent to the manager, they recognized early on that this budget was way higher than normal. So I could say without issue that there were needs of the community that did not get reflected in this budget, because out of the gate, the budget was too high. And I know the superintendent would probably say that he had to remove things just to bring it into, I won't even say reasonable, but to bring it to where he needed to bring it. And town manager had to do the same thing, to leave needs on the table back at the departments. Some of those could have been personnel, a policeman, a fireman, more people on public works, could have been people-related, could have been project-related. In the Board of Ed, there's a whole gambit of special ed, regular ed needs that might have been left behind because this year was already too high for, what they thought the town could bear. Collaboration was good. Now, here's a couple of good things. The rainy day fund, we here set a policy years ago. We built the rainy day fund collaboratively, and we set a policy that the rainy day fund started out at 9, went to 10, now is at 11. 11% of expenses, there's a little formula, but roughly we keep 11% of town expenses in the rainy day fund as a reserve. We could only use it for capital, for emergencies, one-time opportunities, and for debt reduction. We cannot use it for operations. So we have a hand tied behind our back in a way with this fund. They are our reserves, but they're limited in what they could be used for. So if you're looking at a budget of 170 million, 175 million, we're looking at about 19 million in our rainy day fund. And then we have that invested. Thanks to an investment committee we set up under Mr. Bedoin years back. We invested the money. When we started to grow this rainy day fund, we had to do the best we could in investing it. And within some rules, we invested. In addition to the rainy day fund, we call it the rainy day fund excess. So in addition to the 19 million, we look like we have an additional 7 million. 7 million more than the excess, 7 million more than the required floor of the rainy day fund. That puts us in a very good position. So with that, knowing we have the 7 million in there, we could use it for capital. We could use it for, of course, one-time opportunities to pay down debt. We met with the superintendent and the chairwoman of the Board of Education, and we said that we as a board stand ready to fund any capital regarding safety in our schools. So if they're going to put together a need, whether they put it together next month, they put it together in whenever they bring it forth to this board, we are likely to review it and likely, of course I can't speak for every member, but we are likely to pass it and take that money from the excess rainy day fund. We have the money there for reasonable capital expenditures regarding safety. That safety has always been a priority of the board. As Mr. Pocock would always say, safety has to be a priority of the board. So we stand ready to do that, and that will not be from operations. That'll be a separate maneuver from excess rainy day fund money that we have. So with that said, that was basically a little overview of where we are in this budget. This budget is still high, not just high in a Southington sense. It's high. It's high with inflation at its core as its most prominent driving factor. Inflation is a thing that we can't hide from at home. We can't hide from it in our business, and at work. And now it's come to government. We can't really, there's no way to insulate ourselves from inflation. And the U.S. government is trying to reduce inflation, and the technique to do that is to raise interest rates and slow the economy. If they could slow the economy, inflation will go down, the dollar will become more valuable, and the technique to do that raises interest rates. So at the same time, interest rates are going up because they're trying to tamp down inflation, but at the same time, we're seeing in our budget in places the effect of a rising interest rate. So we get hit with the inflation and we get hit with the countermeasure. It is what it is, and it's what we had to deal with in this budget when everybody came forward and said, you have a level services budget that's going to cost you $12.9 million more than the current year. There were some, I call them conditions subsequent, things that happened after the town manager presented the budget. And I'm sure when the town council gets it, there will be conditions subsequent to them too. After we give our recommendation, something may become better known or change, and they may have something to adjust. So a couple of them were, there's only two. First one went the wrong way on us. The first one is the state of Connecticut came and told us that we had to ante up with $840,000 for MERS. The Municipal Employee Retirement Fund was underfunded. We had budgeted properly, but the state came and said we need to put more in. We budgeted a 3% increase each year. What happened was the fund balance did not generate the amount of income it should have generated, so the fund balance was short, and also in a high inflationary time, MERS, anybody who's retired on a MERS pension generally gets a 2% cost of living increase called a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. This year, because inflation was so high, the cost of living increase on a MERS pension went up to 6%. When the administrator of the plan looked at it, they said, for us to continue this plan or to fund this plan adequately, every municipality had to give more money. I think New Britain was looking at $3 million. We were looking at $840,000. Every town got a letter and said, you've got to ante up. So we, in our previous meeting, we held a public hearing because we were changing the budget, and we increased the amount we're budgeting into MERS up by $840,000. Then two other things happened. One of them was we locked in our gas and diesel prices. We lock them in for a year. We hedge against the price. So in doing that, we were $83,000 better than budget. So we immediately adjusted that because that was a given. And the other thing, in looking at self-insurance, looking at the trend, another month went by. We looked at the trend of self-insurance contributions, the amount you pay as a premium. And the town pays the major portion, the employees pay a smaller portion, but the self-insurance contribution number for the budget year we're talking about was able to be reduced by $624,000 on the Board of Ed side and $100,000 on the general government side for a total of $724,000. Those were just things that happened, and we responded to them. No magic. And now we're now faced at that point. That's where we are. And now we're faced at having to propose a budget for the current year. So with all that said, I hope it's meaningful to someone out there to hear all that. Now we're at a point where we have to adopt some motions. So I'll just follow the agenda here. And the first item.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
You're just going to have to add item 2A when you get to 2. You're going to be doing item 1 now, but the agenda was item 2A, B, and C.
Yeah.
That was before more information came available to me after the agenda went out. But this is a regular meeting. It's not a special meeting. You could add that item under item 2, no matter how you want to.
We could add what under item 2?
It's the increase in the utilization of the interest income, et cetera.
Understood.
Et cetera. Yeah.
So we can do number 1 then, and then add 2. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so the first action here is the adoption of fiscal year 2023-2024 Board of Finance proposed budget based upon the following motions. Motion number 1, I'll read it, and somebody could make it, but I want to just read it into the record. Motion number 1A is to approve the repurposing and utilization of fiscal year 2021 Board of Education non-lapsing fund in the amount of $503,594 towards the 2023-2024 general fund budget as revenue, fund balance utilized. That's the motion. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion? I'll say what it is. It was, in short terms, it's the fiscal year 2021 Board of Education surplus. They underspent their budget, and when they underspend it, it goes into the fund balance. And that was, usually that's all done by strategy, not by accident. And the state of Connecticut allows you to defer a surplus of about 2%. They call it a non-lapsing fund. Discussion?
Yeah, I mean, when this first came up, John, I tabled it initially, or we tabled it, but I was against it because that was money that was in the current budget of $700,000. That was the Board of Ed had allocated projects to. A lot of them were safety issues. So it almost seems like we're taking it from this year's budget to help out the we're talking about, right? So when you look at the Board of Ed, it looks like you're cutting like 625. Really, it's 1.3 million because they're cutting 700,000 from this year and allocating to our current budget. So it's a little deceiving. People are going to think that we're only cutting 600,000 from the Board of Ed. Really, we're cutting 1.3 because they're cutting 700 to use in the current budget. Right?
Now in the rainy day fund.
It's kind of, yeah.
And secondary to that, it seems to me that if you take that money from their ability to use it as they want to, should this budget then go to the council, and the council then overrides what our suggestion is and cuts more, then that money goes I don't know where, but it doesn't go into their budget.
A couple of things. It actually is, it's taxpayer money. It's money that's been, in the non-lapsing account. It's used, it comes from operations, and it's there to be used in a subsequent year or subsequent years on anything the Board of Ed so wants. The Board of Ed has asked us to do this. Okay? They so want it. That's their determination of what's the best thing for this budget. Now, usually, in fact, we've never, ever overridden their requests for this non-lapsing account because it comes to us eventually for a vote, and some of this money has already come for us for various projects that they want to do, for this year using this money, because the 760 is just what's left. It's not what was there before, which was quite a considerable amount of money more. Okay. Number two, in terms of safety issues, this was also discussed at the Board of Ed, where they had 7 safety issues that some members felt should have been funded with this money. And so they had a special meeting to discuss that. And in that discussion, they said, okay, 2 of the safety issues will be handled this year. 5 won't be. And those 5 is $78,000. And among them are things like maintenance repairs of walkways, which are technically safety. I mean, you don't want people to trip over. But they're generally safety issues that in a general maintenance program for a place that has 12 buildings, you're going to have to, fund those over time. And they've elected to do that on a lower sort of, less of a scale. So my take is the Board of Ed asked us to do that. They're the ones who are in charge of the actual financial aspects of the budget. We're not. We're in charge of the overall amount of money that this town gives, for education. So we have to understand the big picture. But the actual details of things like, say, 4,000 for maintenance of walkways is decided by them, and it shouldn't be decided by us. So they've asked us to do this. I think it's perfectly appropriate. The issue that Chairman Leary mentioned was if there are safety issues, if they're ones that we've overlooked and need to be done next year, they will happen, okay? Because we've essentially guaranteed that, and we have the money available to do it if so needed. So I think we're okay on this, and I would advocate very strongly in going ahead with this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on 1A. We have a motion and a second. We do a roll call vote.
Mr. Bedoin,
No.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
No.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Chairman Leary.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2.
Okay, the second one is same thing. 1B, motion to approve the repurposing and utilization of fiscal year 2022 Board of Education non-lapsing funds of $256,862 toward the 2023-2024 general fund budget as revenue, fund balance utilized. And again, this is the same thing. It's just the last one we did was from the 2021 surplus. This is from the 2022 unspent Board of Ed funds. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Morrison, second by Mr. Lebenik. Any discussion on this? Same story. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Sure. Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
No.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Mr. Bedoin,
No.
Chairman Leary.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-2.
Okay, thank you. The next one we have to motion onto the agenda, right, Jim? We got a little agenda difference here.
Correct.
So,
I could read the motion, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman.
read the motion to put them on.
The administration recommends the following motion. Motion to increase general fund revenue interest income by $200,000 and resetting the uncollectible tax collection from 1.8 to 1.7. I recommend that go on the agenda.
Okay, what's the motion? Do we need a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve it going on the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second going on the agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. It's on the agenda. Now we'll take it up as an item. 2A, a motion to improve increasing the general fund revenue, interest income by $200,000 and setting the uncollectible tax collection rate at 1.7, not the 1.8 requested. Need a motion to approve, or motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I'd just like to make one point, which I think is important. When we went through the budget, kind of like with, say what the Board of Ed did, we went through to look at various issues on the revenue side and places where we had money, and maybe we could use that in ways that we haven't before. Okay, so we looked at all ways of doing that, as opposed to going and doing, cuts which may have impacted our services. So this is another, just to say essentially what it is. It does give us money. We have to be aware of it. It's less of a conservative stance than we usually take for budgeting. We've probably imposed, the 1.7 has imposed probably a task on the town manager. But, when you've had a budget like this, these are the things that you have to do, as opposed to, giving people massive tax increases or cutting services to the bone.
Any further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on 2A.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Mr. Bedoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Chairman Leary.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, 2B. 2B is a motion to approve $110,460,653 for the Board of Education operating budget for fiscal year 2023-2024.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yeah, John.
Yeah.
Can you explain the reductions or the increase?
Yes.
Because people don't know what you got.
Yep. I could do that. Okay. The current Board of Ed budget is, I'll use big rounded terms, is that okay?
Yeah.
Keep it high level. The current Board of Ed budget is 104 million. The ask was to bring it to 112 million, up 7.6 million. That includes the MERS adjustment. So what just happened here? So instead of 112 million, you're hearing, instead of 112, you're hearing 110.5. Okay, let's go through it. The first piece of it was very small. It's $5,000 for the change in gasoline and diesel. The next one, the self-insurance contributions, as I said earlier, got adjusted because the self-insurance committee looked at the run rate and said they were going to reduce the self-insurance contributions. Those went down $624,000 on the Board of Ed side. So what we did was we reduced the amount that the Board of Ed would have to pay for self-insurance based upon the self-insurance committee looking at the run rate. And that committee is made up of a myriad of people from different functions. That's two pieces. Then we're going to ask for the use of $400,000 from the self-insurance fund. The self-insurance has its own reserve fund. Where indication is that the self-insurance reserve fund could allow $400,000 to come out. So 296 of that is in this number, the Board of Ed number. The town gets 104. The next item was what we just did. It was the use of the non-lapsing fund to 760. That's the next piece, to use prior year surplus to fund this year's budget. And so that really comes from the rainy day fund in a way, comes from fund balance back into the budget as revenue, because it was left over for prior years. And the last piece was just a general reduction to the request by 625. And that's how you get from a requested increase of 7.9, and you get to, so we go from 104,418 on the Board of Ed to 110,460. So we always go up, but we're going up from 104,418 to 110,460.
Oh, I just had had a question. Do you use the self-insurance recommended amount that you're going to ask the town council to reduce by in our budget number?
The only thing that's constrained this board is your own policies. You don't have a policy on self-insurance. So last year you did the same thing. You took $400,000 out of the undesignated. So the council, of course, is the final authority. If the council chooses to use this recommendation, they can so use it.
So you can put it in our number?
Well, just like you did last year.
Okay.
So right now we have a motion to approve $110,460,653 for the Board of Ed.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, I would like to speak before.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
It's okay.
The games people play, this has been like a checkerboard, and somebody just takes the checkers and throws them any old place, hopes they land where they want them to. I'm going to use the non-gender pronoun they, referring to either one or more of the members of the majority party here. They threw around numbers like, let's raise the taxes by 3.99% so that they, the public, wouldn't think it's 4. Well, let's raise it 4.24% so it's not 4.25, so it looks better to the public. Let's try 4.49 so it's not 4.5, so it looks better. Now, we, the public, you, the public, know better. We all go to Walmart and we see the $2.99 and say, that's $3 out of our pocket. We're not stupid. But the numbers were played with that way. Again, played with, so that they think that we're all stupid. There were years when they ignored the community needs so that they could keep the tax rate 0.1, negative 0.1%. And now we're getting hit with it because they threw some more checkers around on the table. To set the budget, our town manager and the superintendent of schools requested that cuts be made evenly so that the percentage would be 39%, 61. I think that was the. Oh, sorry, 31, 69%. So that both groups would be evenly hit by the cuts. Guess what, folks? Some more checkers got thrown around, and it's not even anymore. The Board of Ed's getting hit differently from the town, and it affects education. They had signs up during election season. We support education. I support education. There was a nice big face out there. I support education. But guess who's the first one to hit that education to cut it? I support police. I got the nomination by the police union. So now, guess what? Here we were in some of our workshops, and our police department had requested an additional officer. That was cut by the town manager because he's got to do what he does. So I requested that we add 2 police officers into our budget because all of us are concerned with public safety. Just today, and I'll pull up a photo that I took from Southington Talks, which is not always reliable. However, the person who signed it was Steve Kalkowski, and he signed it Southington Police Commission. Just today, 2 stolen vehicles, one recovered in New Britain, one not yet recovered, one break-in inside an open garage with valuables left in the vehicle, and one attempted break-in where the homeowner was alerted by Ring Vehicles. That's today, folks. Yet we can't even request the police officers because it was poo-pooed immediately, not voted on in the workshops, and not brought up for a public hearing where we could actually discuss it in front of the public. Just, nope, we're not going to do it. Too much money. This is our public safety, everybody. Our checkers thrown around on the table. Then we get to the town council. This was a fun one for us last year. They threw around a few checkers too. This board set forth a budget, went to the town council, and guess what? Those people who hadn't attended our sessions, hadn't attended our workshops, hadn't been there, hadn't been asking questions, hadn't called and spoken to at least some of us, I don't know about all of us, but at least some of us, decided they're going to just pull out a few extra $1,000, $100,000, $1 million and cut it from the school system. Their checkers hurt, and it hurt a lot of people. It hurts the education of the town. They who support education got nailed. Now we're taking more from the rainy day fund. Now the rainy day fund, as I see it, I mean, I have a little rainy day fund. I don't have a whole lot of money. I'm on fixed income. I'm one of those seniors on a fixed income. Yeah, I have enough, and I am so thankful to have enough. But I'm on a fixed income. My income's not going up at the rate of inflation, the rate of anything else. I've also been very poor twice in my life, where I was lucky to have leftovers that had strange colors on them for dinner on Friday night, because that's all there was. So we have to think about those people in our community. And our rainy day fund covers accidents, things that cannot possibly be foreseen. For instance, a few years back, there was a major infrastructure failure on Meriden Avenue. What paid for that? Rainy day fund. If we take from the rainy day fund a little here, a little there, a little this year, a little more next year, yeah, we might be adding to it because we have a policy that was very well written and well done by a group led by my husband many years ago. That's a great policy. It's been added to and increased ever since, which is great for our bottom line for this community, great for our Dun & Bradstreet ratings. But if we keep taking from it and something big happens that we cannot possibly foresee, we're screwed. And that checkerboard not only gets flipped over, it gets tossed right out the window. So everybody, we're the ones, we're the checkers. We're getting tossed around. And it's not good for our community. Think who's tossing. When it comes to the next election, remember this. Remember when they put up their signages and things, who's really not supporting the community that we need, the community that we know and that we love, and we chose to live here. I've been here my entire life. I don't want to have to go live somewhere else. I also don't want abortion and immigration issues brought into local elections, because we here in this room do not control those issues. I don't want banning books in our libraries. That's not appropriate for our community or anything. We need to take care of the community, the infrastructure, the public safety, the education of our people. That's what's the big concern. And we need to do it without worrying about whether or not we're getting reelected. I'm not going to get reelected. I'm not running again because I can't stay on the checkerboard and the playing. I love government, but hate this political bull, and that's what this is. Thank you.
Just a technical point on the rainy day fund. The rainy day fund right now is $28 million. Okay, what we keep of our policies in order for, that we keep as a minimum. We cannot go below that because we want that sum of money to be used for any emergency in town. Is about 18, 19 million. Okay, we changed it last year to 11% because we knew inflation was coming, and we knew emergencies may well be, take more money to, address. So we changed it for that reason. Okay, so there's at least $8 or $9 million extra above the minimum that we have to carry. And that's what we can use every year for the things that Chairman Leary says, which is things like, one-time capital is what we use most of it for, right? Because, sometimes it's good to use cash for that instead of going to a referendum and bonding things over 20 years. We have enough money to do that. We have enough money to pay stuff if the schools need it, as we talked about earlier. So I don't want anyone to get the idea that our reserves are being played with. They're not. It's a serious fiscal issue for this town, and we've got it covered. Thanks.
Yeah, Tony, you bring up a good point. I have like 7 million, but Mark, on average, has been using
2 million.
2 a year.
2 a year. So
Correct.
That's going to go away real quick.
No, it all.
Any return to surplus
We have
of
not,
more.
other than buying the municipal center, we've always put that money back in plus.
Through what avenue?
Surplus.
End of the
Just
year.
surplus?
End of the
That
year
doesn't mean You're
surplus.
going to have it every year.
Correct, but we have,
Okay.
in the
And I'm
7
not
years
saying
I've
it's
been doing
wrong. I agree with you
Yeah.
using it, but we do use it.
Correct.
For
You're absolutely
capital
right. We
projects.
use it for capital projects, but I don't want the public to think that that's reducing. It isn't. We actually replenish that every year.
Every
Well,
year
we're-
it's
we're
grown.
fortunate.
Except for the municipal center.
Yeah, we're fortunate, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it's going to happen every year.
But according to the audit, Kevin, we put in $2.34 million into that.
Nope, which is nice.
Every year surplus
year we
goes.
get- right.
Every year surplus goes in to the rainy day fund. The policy says we keep 11% of expenses, and even using the 2 million this year, we're going to be at 7.7 million. The interesting thing is, not just per our policy, but per Dun & Bradstreet, we can't use it for operations. We can't, even this year, we can't reach in there and say, let's take 3 million out and use it for operations. But we certainly can say, let's get a proposal for school safety items we might have left on the table somewhere along the way and do a capital project. That money is there. It just can't be used for ongoing day-to-day operations. It could be used for capital. We have it, and we do use it. And where it comes from is every year I've been here, we've generated a surplus probably of over $1 million, and well over that. And that million goes in to it, and we call it excess rainy day. It's amount above the amount we said we should have in there. When we all started back in 2009, we were actually having deficit spending. We didn't have a balanced budget. It wasn't until the 2011 budget that we considered that one a balanced budget, and then every one from there, we grew the rainy day fund. So it's good to have. We're in a good position.
And it's also analogous to what we talked about earlier with the Board of Ed. They don't sweep their money into the town reserves like the town does. Okay, they sweep it into the non-lapsing account where they're able to use it according to state law for pretty much anything they want to. And they do that each year. They've had $1 million in the last couple of years because we budget very conservatively. Okay, we try not to take risks. We budget conservatively. we do the right thing, to run the services, and we have money left over at the end of the year because that's what you should be doing. Okay, we can utilize that downstream, like we are now, we're proposing, in order to defray, say, a large tax increase.
And I'll agree with Mrs. Zoni that we did talk about getting to, at times, as we were in our discussion, said, can we get to 2.99? Can we get to just under 3? Can we get to just under 4.25? Can we get this thing just under 4.5? Anything down from 6.66. So we did discuss options, and we also, to be honest, we did discuss optics, which is, can we get just below 4 just under 4.5. Very true. But, some people get there by saying, what do we need to, how do we get there? Some are looking at it from the mill rate up, some are looking at it from the services down, and you kind of meet in the middle at the mill rate. So that statement, yes. Okay, is there any more discussion on the Board of Ed? Do you have, Mrs. Zoni, do you have a proposal on the Board of Ed other than the 110, 460, 653, more or
You
less?
have a motion on the table already.
Right. Any further discussion, though? No, this is the motion, but do you have any further discussion on what you think the number ought to be?
That's not appropriate at this time.
Okay, take that as a no.
John, what is the percentage increase? Because I know we're,
Percentage increase of what? The whole thing?
well, we're doing piecemeal here, so.
Yeah.
Just for the Board of Ed, what would be the increase if you
It
that
came
amount?
in as 7.3%.
Yeah?
So it's an easy number. Jim's got a calculator.
We'll divide. What is it? What?
It's 110.
Joe,
110.
It's
460,
5.79.
5.79.
5.79 increase, down from a 7.3 ask. But still an increase. Any further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote on 2B. It's a motion to approve, once again, 110, 460, 653 for the Board of Education operating budget for 2023, 2024. We have a motion, we have a second, we just need a roll call vote.
Mr. Bedoin,
No.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
No.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
and Chair Larry.
Yes.
The yeses have it 4-2.
Okay, thank you. The next one is a motion to approve 49,927,618 for the general government operating budget for the fiscal year 2023, 2024.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. Discussion? One point I'll make on discussion is when you talk about the percents, what percent of a reduction goes to Board of Ed versus town? The town is seeing, we changed the revenue estimates in here. The town came forward and said, here's what we want expenses to be, and here's what we want revenue to be. We increased the revenue side, so in doing that, it did balance the percent in a way between the town and the Board of Ed side. That balancing didn't happen on the expense side, but it happens on the revenue side because we increased the revenue estimates put forth by the manager in our budget. So between a combination of an expense reduction and an increase in revenue, that puts a squeeze on the manager's budget, as he could attest if you. I mean, just
The manager was never thrilled about the increasing or decreasing what I put in for revenues. That's never something obviously I understand where the board is. Obviously, I put in 1.8 for uncollectible. I started with 2.1, so I dropped it from 2.1 to 1.8. Where it is, and obviously the board makes that decision, so I understand it's going to be 1.7. And I understand we've already increased the interest income by a substantial amount. The board's increasing it by 200,000, and we understand why.
Can I ask you a question? How much do you feel your budget was impacted by inflation? I know salaries weren't
Well,
affected, and neither was gas.
I'm sorry?
because I know when you said salaries weren't affected, because the contract was like a year and a half ago before
Well,
inflation
we had
hit.
contracts this
Okay.
year, this fiscal year. Our unions were very, very cooperative, and I thought they did a great job. They came in at 2.33 in some and 2.4 in others, which I thought was very reasonable. But my increase this year were pretty obvious. I added 150,000 to the police department for overtime. I added money to community service. Those are the big ticket items I added this year. Some of that, obviously based upon this, obviously we're gonna look. Jim and I will look at to see that where we are after the vote here tonight. But so usually the first thing I look at is things I increase in the budget. Will be the first thing I look at to decrease a
Right.
little bit.
But do you think inflation affected your budget a lot?
It was huge. Oh, huge.
It was
Because,
huge?
if you look at, I'll give you an example. My budget was based on, and I may have the numbers wrong, but I think my gas for this year's budget was $1.15 a gallon for regular. $1.15 a gallon for regular, because I locked in 3 years ago, right? 1.15 to 1.29.
No, two.
No, has to be higher.
No. This budget.
The
one we're in
current
right now.
budget, current year.
We're locked in for 3 years. So
The new one is,
the one that's expiring in June. So you're asking what the increase was. The budget we're sitting in right now, the gasoline and diesel were both in ones, not in threes,
dollar,
which is I put
dollar
into my budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then we backed that off because we locked into two. So the current budget we're in right now, in March
Yeah.
of 2023, the fiscal year budget we're in right now, our gas and diesel prices have been locked in for 3 years at $1 and change for each of those. So that was a huge inflation number for us because we burn unbelievable amounts of fuel.
So what did you lock in, like 2 something?
We just locked in at
271 for one product and about
Yeah.
281 for diesel.
So
Okay,
they
you
were
went
locked
from
in for a year.
You went from $1 to 2?
Yeah,
That-
because we
Okay.
can't.
And that
we
includes
can't-
the gasoline and the diesel price, but a whole slew of fees that governments have to pay to the state of Connecticut in the way of we don't pay sales tax per se. Like I think the sales tax on a gallon of gas is in Connecticut something like 30 cents a gallon or 28 cents. We don't pay that, but we pay underground storage. We pay for underground leaking tank funds. We pay for all these other things that we have to add. And the biggest one is an 8.814%, I believe that's, and please if I'm off just a tad, let's just say
we didn't
8.8%
go up far
tax
enough on the points.
on the well, the state does on the what they call the
Kidding, Jim.
gross receipt tax, which is barbaric because that is on the dollar amount. It's not on a gallon amount. Some of the fees are based upon your gallons. The gross receipt tax is a percentage of the price, and if prices are going like this, that tax they're collecting is going like this. So that those prices sound like, well, I was at the pump today, and with a discount card, I was like at $2.80. You know what I mean? But I don't, or $2.90. I'm sorry, $2.90. But I wish it was $2.80. But folks have to understand it's the product plus all these other fees that go into place as well.
and the hedge is for a year out. So it's not today's price, it's the estimate of the
To answer Kevin's
service
question,
line.
yes, fuel was a big rider.
Yeah.
Every motor vehicle we bought this fiscal year that we're starting on July 1 is a lot higher than the ones we had. Yes, the inflation did have that. We buy everything that you guys buy. I mean, we buy, down to the paper products. that we
Toilet
buy.
paper.
I mean, yeah, paper products. Yes, it was a factor. But the other factor is that you mentioned it. Self-insurance went up big, even though we're getting cuts now. So when you're talking about, and Steve's in the same boat I am, when you talk about that stuff, you talk about your employees. So our MERS numbers went higher, and our insurance numbers went higher. So therefore, those are really driving factors, and we're about in the same boat, 80-ish. Our budgets are about 80-ish, 82% just staff. So when you get MERS numbers going up, which every one of my employees belongs to, and also you get self-insurance numbers go up, those are big numbers.
Their inflation at the core. Okay, we have a motion.
Sorry, can I just say one point as to referencing back to one of Mrs. Zoni's points, which is we originally had an idea to do cuts for education and the town at essentially a percentage rate of what of their budget. So and it was on 69-31, something like that, 70-30. Yeah. So we didn't do that because we started to, originally had that idea. We didn't do it because this has given town manager, a challenge on the revenue side. So we said, okay, well, he's going to have a revenue and a cut. That's what he's got to manage. So we put a little bit more on the education. And that's why we changed it. Not a lot more. It's about 100 grand more, I think. But that's why we changed that, for that reason. So that we tried to get everybody equally, unhappy is the wrong word, but equally, have a challenge, a management issue that they can deal with, okay? So that was part of the thinking there.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? Okay, ask for a roll call vote on 2C.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
No.
Mr. Badoin,
No.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chair Larry.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2.
Okay, next one. A motion to approve $13,106,666 for the debt service budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mark, do you just want to give a quick overview for everyone just on what we're seeing in debt service? And I know that we separated it now
All right,
out
this
of the
is-
town general government budget.
This is something we talked about for many years so that the public would understand what exactly the debt costs them. Most of the items you see here are things that went to referendum and obviously the public had a chance to speak on. When Amelia and I started talking about this probably 2 years ago, we mentioned the fact that as things move on, and of course now the library was approved, this is a number that's going to, that was increased substantially. In fact, the number is close to 21%. Was the increase from year over year when it comes to debt service. For the next couple of years, we will be going out and we're going to sell bonds in the next couple of years. Our first one's going to be in April sometime.
April 19th.
So April 19th, we're going to be selling some bonds. So you also mentioned, Chairman Larry, that it's a little bit more expensive. When you talked about interest rates, the interest rates are not in isolation. When you borrow money, including a town, you go out for bonding, it's a little bit more.
And that's all inflation at its core.
That's it. We're estimating 3.5%, Jim? 3.5%?
For year one.
Some of you remember the last bond we had was substantially lower than that, and we did that, I believe, 2.5 years ago.
Sure.
So, yes, so that's all part of it. But I will say as an asterisk to this, the items that were put forth to the voters were items that were necessary. They were, whether it be schools, roads, libraries, whatever the case may be, this is something a town must do. We just can't allow our infrastructure to fall. So I think in this particular case, just like all of us who have to put a new roof on or do something with our house that has to be done for maintenance purposes, this is the mortgage that we're paying.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Zoni,
I'm sorry.
this is for debt service.
Debt service.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Badoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chair Larry.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, next one, a motion to approve $287,550 for the Animal Control Fund budget for the year 2023-2024.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Roll call vote?
Mr. Badoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chair Larry.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, next one, motion to approve $6,704,008 for the sewer fund budget for fiscal year 2023-2024.
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Somebody second.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Mr. Badoin,
Yes.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chair Larry.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, number 5, motion to approve fiscal year 2023-2024 5-year capital improvement project list and to proceed with the recommended funding strategies outlined in year one for $78,840,651. Discussion, motion. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Bedoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chair Leary.
Yes.
Unanimously passed, 6-0.
Okay,
Recommend a 5-minute break.
I do too. Let's make it, we'll do 10.
Okay.
8:10, well, let's come back at 8:10. If somebody has to use the bathroom or have a little discussion, we'll come back at 8:10 and go through the rest of the agenda. Okay, we're back. It's now 7:10?
8:10.
8:10, and we resume. Okay, we're here on item 5, which is the financial assessment of the town. We could move a little quicker at a summary level, but let's go through revenues and expenses where we think we are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, item 1 is revenues. You have just a very brief summary in there showing you a little bit of an update since last month. Item 2 is the expenditures. Obviously, and I noted there on the agenda, items have been addressed or are soon to be addressed with some departmental transfers. So there's nothing really that I added to that at this point in time. So
Could you just read out where we are on revenues?
sure.
Just in total, how far above?
Right here. Got it?
I don't.
Revenues right now in the several, the major items, the significant items. I mean, there's some small ones here and there
Just the total.
that don't matter. About a 1.490.
So we're 1.49 ahead on revenue this year. That's a positive, and that's what helps generate our surplus. Okay. Any questions on revenue? Okay, next are on expenses.
There's no report because everything has been addressed with transfers. So everything looks like it's pretty good up to this point in time.
Okay, on track.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Nothing significant, at least.
So revenue up 1.5 million, expenses on track. Good. We have here a review of the contingency budget line item.
Yeah, that's item.
Take a look how much we drew on item 3 in section 6.
Nothing new on, same as
Yeah.
same as last month.
The contingency through the end of the February 28th, 2023 meeting had transferred $79,000 out of the town manager's contingency to other line items
Yep.
that needed it. On this month's agenda, the agenda you have in front of you, there's 0. So at the end of this month, there will still be $79,000 used.
79,000 used of 650?
$650, that's correct.
Okay. We still have contingency. Okay. We'll skip capital projects and any other funds because it says no report this month, right? This is not a reporting month for those. And now we'll get into any subcommittee reports just briefly and focus on financials. Sewer, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, just quickly for financial stuff. There'll be a consideration for a transfer of funds to this board tonight from the sewer department. It's to do with the fact that the newly negotiated weekly non-call fees determined by an agreement between Southington and the local was done, and in order to ensure that we can pay that, we want to transfer $13,950 from sewer maintenance into the on-call, and that will be on the agenda later tonight.
Thank you. Public Works, Mr. Pocock, Mrs. Zoni.
Feels like this was forever ago, but it's only March 1st that we met. Bulky waste is open, and the stickers are available on site the first and third Saturdays in April, which is April 1st, this next weekend, and April 15th. That's on site, but you must have your driver's license and your car registration with you to get them there. Otherwise, they're available at the Public Works Department on Mulberry Street. In the Plantsville Safety Improvement Project, bids were scheduled to be open today. I hope that happened. I don't know. Friday, said March 29th when we had our meeting. So Friday, that's coming. And the only other thing was that the Water Department is seeking federal grants and a little bit of state money for manganese removal out of the water systems. The total that they're anticipating is about $21 million, but they're hoping that it'll be all grant funded. Thank you.
Okay, any questions so far? Open space, Mr. Pocock.
We got a meeting.
Okay. Self-insurance, Mr. Lubenick, Mr. Bedoin.
Sure. So we have results through February. So we're through 8 fiscal months of the year. We had a slightly better result versus budget for the month of February. We're running for year to date through the first 8 months about 5 to 6% under budget. We do have a higher budget total for the remaining 4 months of the year, which is to be expected. It does, obviously, insurance, as we always say, is unpredictable. We don't know exactly what it will do. However, 5 or 6% under budget at this point in time with a higher budget than our run rate so far for the balance of the year. It does appear that we are in, relatively speaking, good shape, and we hope that trend would continue and that we would come under the budgeted total for this fiscal year. And the second point I would add, which is what was part of our discussions earlier in reducing the budget request that was sent to us originally, was we have a consultant we work with. They update their projection for the following fiscal year every month. The Self-Insurance Committee can act through March for a final budget. When we set the initial budget, the projection was just about $30 million. That did come down to just above $29 million. So the Self-Insurance Committee, their last meeting, recommended a budget of $28.9 million, using $1 million from the reserve fund, which is the most that the Self-Insurance Committee can recommend per their policy. Obviously, the action we took tonight is recommending use of 1.4 versus the 1 million, but that's how we got the budget. The updated budget number of was 27.9 million. It was the 28.9 million budget less the 1 million from the reserve fund. The last point I would add is the town council. We will have an updated projection. Again, the town council has the option to ask the Self-Insurance Committee to look at the budget once more. I would expect them to do that, and we will do that at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, I inadvertently did not send that out with your packages on Friday afternoon. I apologize. So I left the hard copies on your desk in front of your plates today. My apologies about that.
That's fine. We have it.
And also, about 2 minutes ago, I misspoke. The town manager's budget had $600,000 to start the year, not $650,000.
Aha.
That I have engraved in my mind.
For the record, I don't want to get in trouble 8:30 tomorrow from the guy to my right here.
8:30. It's a late start.
Well, we're here earlier than that, but the building opens at 8:30.
Economic strike, Mr. Morrison.
We had one meeting, but it was just executive session, so nothing to talk about.
Okay. Okay. Investments, Mr. Bedoin.
Nothing more to add than with the finance director. Revenues.
Anything from our fire commission liaison roles? Mr.
No.
Pocock, Mr. Bedoin?
Nope.
I couldn't make it conflict with meetings.
Yeah.
Fire truck, ladder. Hoping to have it online in September, the brand new ladder truck, but
Yeah.
With everything going on in the world, it's now, Chief told me it's now December.
Supply chain?
Whatever excuse people are using nowadays, yes.
Okay. I assume we make final payment on it?
No,
Okay.
we've held back the money on that. We made substantial payment, but not final payment.
Okay. Any other subcommittee reports? Board communications. Okay, public communications. Review of long-range plans and priorities, not going to skip that one, right?
Well, obviously, until the
the
state
budget's-
budget is totally done, there's surprises could happen all the way to June this year.
Yep.
Yep.
Why so long?
That's a long session this year, so the last, we hope to have everything done before that. Pretty confident on the town is going to get the bills that we have to mine.
I'm going to ask for unanimous consent on all the consent agenda items. These are items where the money's been received by the town, and all we're doing is appropriating it to the line item. Okay? So, appropriation 3,250, Special Revenue Fund number 209, Prevention Program Services. Appropriation $75, Fund 209, K-9 Program Supplies. Appropriation 1,000 even, Fund 209, Police Vehicle Maintenance. Appropriation 2,540, Special Revenue Fund 209 to Police Special Operations Grant. Appropriation $370, Special Revenue Fund number 209 to the K-9 Program Supplies. And last one, appropriation $42 to Special Revenue Fund for veterans, ACO, and STEPS. Do we have a motion to take all those items as read?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Next item. A lot of them.
Well, the next item should be, it's out of the consent agenda because of a member can't vote on it, so that's why we separate.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, well, a lot of them have the stars. Okay, appropriations. Appropriation $500, calendar house overtime.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
501.
501.
One abstain.
Okay, number two, appropriation 752-290, Special Revenue Fund 210 from the ARPA funds for water main service projects to Merrill, service projects at Merrill and Oak and Academy.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yep.
We do have the superintendent here today, and he'll come up to the mic in a second. Just to refresh your memory, the town allocated $900,000 toward the water department as part of our $13 million ARPA funds. It's specifically designed to make sure that to clean up, making sure the water stays safe, whether it be with lead or whatever the case may be. This is the first time that they're asking for a portion of that $900,000, and the superintendent's right here. Doug?
Good evening. How are you? I'm Doug Arndt. I'm the new superintendent of water. Been here since September of 2021. Been a very quick year and about a half or so. My first time before your board tonight, but probably not the first time it will be for the remainder of the year as we get into our future projects. And obviously, this is the first use of the ARPA funds. We're improving some water main just around Academy is right outside of the town hall here. It's one of the oldest portions of town. We've carried a 20% contingency because sometimes when you get into the older portions of town, you don't know what you may encounter. Again, we're trying to keep costs as low as possible. And there's a number of, I think there's like 4 to 6 lead goosenecks in this area. So we're also removing some lead. We're improving fire flow protection. The current pipe is some of the oldest in town, and it's undersized. 4 inch is going to go to an 8-inch pipe. So again, a great improvement, particularly in the downtown area, in an area that is again heavily used throughout the season, particularly the Apple Festival. I've got a number of details here if you would like, but I'm just grateful to be before you and be able to say hello.
It's a very straightforward request.
Thank you. And we're aware of the request because on our list, so we should be good here. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Nice
night.
seeing you.
Thank you for your patience, by the
Likewise.
way, in waiting.
You got to see
Oh,
all the.
I totally
the
understand.
annual drama.
Business is
thank you.
business. Thank you so much.
Doug does his own budget with his own board, so he understands.
You got your own annual.
Well,
drama.
this is a little warm up for. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Take care, Doug.
Thank you,
Have a
Doug.
Good night.
Good night. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor
No, no,
signify.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Roll call.
roll call from ARPA, yep.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Bowdoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Chair Leary.
Yes.
Unanimous, 6-0.
Okay. Next one, appropriation 97,536, Special Revenue Fund, ARPA, for detention pond inspection and cleaning.
With your permission, Mr. Chair, can we
Yeah.
take both at the same time?
Okay, appropriation 159,705, Special Revenue Fund for ARPA, catch basin inspection and cleaning.
As I'm sure you're all aware, MS4 was one of the biggest things that ARPA required us to do, which is cleaning the water, the surface water. This is all part of the ARPA funds, and obviously, we need.
Yep. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second.
That's for 3 and 4, correct?
Yep.
Any discussion? Yeah, for 3 and 4.
Yep.
Any discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Bowdoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chair Leary.
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. Department transfers. Next one, number 5, $9,889, Public Works, Highway to Parks on Call.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No? Okay, 6-0. Next one, number 6, Department transfers, 2,000 even, Planning and Zoning Advertising.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Number 7, Department transfer, 25,000 even, Fire Department Vehicle Maintenance.
Make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The next two could be taken together, too.
Okay. Next two to be taken together. 2 transfers within the Fire Department into legal fees. A transfer of $20,000 even and a transfer of $50,000 even. Fire Department legal fees.
Make a motion to approve both legal fees amount.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just to, obviously, you've all read in the paper, others, that this is currently in arbitration, and arbitration.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Number 10, a transfer $45,000 to the Fire Department overtime.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, motion carries 6-0. Number 11, Department transfer $2,000 even, Animal Control Fund, office supplies.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Control.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Number 12, Department transfer $13,950, Sewer Fund, the on-call, Mr. Morrison mentioned back in the sewer fund, sewer department report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Appropriation, $40,377, Board of Education operations.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Says for informational purposes only.
These are the items that are under a certain amount that I approve during the month, and then we report back to you. These are all.
And that amount is $1,000?
It's $100, $283, and $850.
No.
It's
The-
per line item. Per the charter,
Oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yes, $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
per
Okay.
the charter, the manager has up to $1,000 per year
Yep.
per line, not 1,000 per
I-
transaction.
Yeah, 1,000 per, yeah, you can't make them every minute.
We could change that if you wish, make life easy for everybody.
Okay,
Well, we went from pencil box.
we're all done. It is, make sure I get the right time here.
Mr.
Date
Chairman,
29. Yes,
may I-
Make the
Mr.
motion
Bose.
to
may I
adjourn.
just ask the
Oh,
board your pleasure with regards to Last year, they came in April to present.
Yeah.
It's up to you if you want to do. You guys can think about it. Contact Chairman Larry. John, let me know. It's up to you.
No, what is, we normally have them come in, right?
We normally have them come in. The partner comes in, does a little 10-minute spiel.
What's the concern, though?
No, April's a good month to have it because May is your setting the mill rate, so.
Yeah.
So
April's
Fine.
good.
Let him come in April.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned 8:30. Thank you all.